Welcome back to this special edition of Inside City Hall from inside the Time Warner Cable Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're here for the Democratic National Convention. And, of course, this is Labor Day. We don't want to lose sight of that. There's a lot of politics going on. And, of course, the West Indian Day parade up in Brooklyn. But it's Labor Day, and labor means it's time to talk about organized labor. Here to do that with us is George Gresham. He is the president of Local 1199 of the Service Employees International Union. And you are a good friend of our show. You're a good, well-known part of the labor movement. And I'm glad you decided to spend some time with us. How are you?
I'm happy to be here. I do miss the fact that I'm not in the Caribbean Day Parade, but I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I was. I tweeted something about that. I've been thinking about roti and fried plantains, a little peas and rice. Listen, you, in addition to your delegate duties here, which we'll talk about in a minute,
sure.
You were here just a few days ago, and I saw you made an appearance in Goldsboro, North Carolina, at a church. What was that about?
Yeah, that was Reverend Barber, who's the state leader of the NAACP, decided to have a what we would call a strategic partnership rally, a rally that included both labor, the faith-based community, and the community itself, to talk about the accomplishments that we have learned when we work together. And so it was a celebration, if you will, of the things that we have accomplished in the state of North Carolina and how we promise to go forward. You know, it's amazing that the ability to win North Carolina was really based on the fact that we came and coalesced together to do things in North Carolina or in the South that hadn't been done before. And this was a celebration in an area that historically had been very important to the black community. It's part of the black belt of North Carolina, and it's an area that we now have been able to win. Well, let me say it more directly. It is because, I believe, because of the tremendous work that we've done in fighting to make sure that these voter restriction or these voter ID laws do not exist in North Carolina, in the state of North Carolina. It is because of coalitions like the meeting we attended that made that possible.
Well, I know there was a lot of talk at that meeting about voter registration, voter mobilization.
Yes.
For you to do that as a labor leader, sort of put you in a different place than a lot of the other labor leaders who really looked at the fact that North Carolina is a right-to-work state. It's very hard to organize unions here, not much union representation here. And they decided in some cases not to come to the convention. They decided in some cases not to fund the convention. You're in a different place. Why is that?
You know, I'm disappointed in that. I don't think it's too late. I think that we can still reach out to our other sisters and brothers in labor. I understand that there is a low density of labor in Charlotte. I understand that this is basically a non-union town. I understand that, but I understand that the challenges that we have before us, it doesn't matter to me that we go to a city that is full of the density of labor, but at the end of the day, we lose the election. See, this election is too important, I believe, at this point for us to get stuck in the weeds when we have a whole lot of issues that we must deal with. And so we want to set a different example. We want to make sure that we talk to working people, whether they're labor, whether they're in unions or want to be a part of a union, and say that this election does matter more than it ever has before.
What are the issues between Mr. Romney and President Obama that would be of special interest to labor?
Well, how long do you want to do this interview?
The short list.
The short list. I mean, at the end of the day, President Obama is standing up for the issues that working people depend on. In this country at this point, it is outrageous to think that we may cut Medicare, we may cut Medicaid, we may cut the services that working people need. That we have to get into a long debate on whether to sign a jobs bill, things that stand up for working people. At the same time, people are telling us that we can't raise taxes on people who are making more money, that if they were to live 10 lifetimes, they could never spend. And this, and how do they hide that? They say that you are either resentful or you're begrudging wealth. Not at all. That is not the case. It's a case of fairness and justice. And the difference in what President Obama stands for means that I can believe that my 3-year-old granddaughter is going to have a future where she can strive and take care of her family, as opposed to the 1% that continues to grow. And it is clear to me as night and day. And what hurts me is that they have found a way sometimes to divide working people, to make some of us believe that there's very little difference between what a Mitt Romney administration would do versus a Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. Let me ask you a local question.
Sure.
Up in New York, we read in the paper today that there's talk of a number of unions getting together and trying to, in a relatively early, settle on a mayoral candidate and put a united sort of front of labor behind that candidate. Are you part of those talks, and do you think that's a good idea?
Well, what I will say is that I think that it's a good idea. I absolutely think that it's a good idea. I don't think anything bad about it. I do believe that labor ought to come up with a criteria that if anyone wants to be the mayor of New York, must adhere to that criteria. Now, the criteria ought to be rigid. It ought to be something that's real and significant. But I believe that there's probably still more than one candidate that can fit the criteria. So whether or not labor ends up agreeing on the candidate, I don't think that is nearly as important as we agree on the criteria or the agenda that a candidate who seeks higher office would agree to.
What would be on your list for such an agenda?
Well, I think the issue of labor rights, I think that is important. I think the ability to stop, if you will, privatizing workers in a city that requires so much municipal help. And, you know, working people these days, because of the benefits that we get, you know, I want a mayor that says that working people deserve these benefits, that working people deserve a decent salary. I want them to say that the idea of unionization is not a dirty word, is not a bad word, and that we are servants of the public just like that mayor would be. And so those are things that are important to me, that we have to, if New York is going to be a union town, then it's because of the principles that we represent. And I want to elect a mayor that is agreement with those principles and will stand up for those principles.
Okay.
And stop making working people the enemy.
Here at the convention, you've got, I imagine, a delegation of SEIU workers?
Yes, sir.
And how many folks did you bring down?
Well, we have our executive committee with us. We have, I would say there's close to 100 people here.
Wow.
In our whole delegation.
Okay, so you didn't just show up to cast a vote. You came in force.
We hope to leave Charlotte spreading the message of how important this election is and why it's important to working people. We didn't come to just sit around. We came to talk, to engage, to network, to talk to people. Some people, even though they're here, may not be solidly understanding the major difference. We want to have a conversation with them. We want to be able to be, if you will, emissaries of the difference in the Mitt Romney administration versus Barack Obama. So we came here to do work.
Okay, very good. We're going to leave it right there. And we'll say to you, happy Labor Day. Thank you for spending some time with us.
My pleasure.
Okay.